Welcome to the College Football Takeover here on Bet the Edge, presented by BetMGM. I'm Vaughn Dalzell, along with Eric Froton and Brad Thomas, getting you ready for Friday and Saturday's Week 3 college football slate. Today, we have a few top 25 matchups, plenty of player props, ladder plays, a redemption parlay, 6 Big Ten games, plus our best bets. So it's an absolutely loaded show, to say the least. Brad, before we get into the games, lead us off with some news from Week 2. Any thoughts or bets you feel like you have to get off your chest?
Yeah, man. Week 2 was kind of tough for me. A couple close calls. I lost Bailey by like a yard. Bond had 40 after the second drive and didn't cash, lost by 2. And then the team total unders were really tough. Every FBS underdog in the 12 o'clock window hit their team total over. If you were on 2 or 3 of those unders, then that means you got absolutely crushed.
Yeah, this guy.
Wow, that's wild. As far as me, gosh, if there's any observation I've taken on the props front from the early going, it's tread lightly on quarterback rushing props. I have gotten beat, I think, every possible way on them. Tyler Van Dyke, all of a sudden, running quarterback naturally. Avery Johnson, he can't go and hit his 51.5 despite not being able to throw a forward pass. Jackson Arnold beat me a couple weeks ago. Nico Yamiliava, as we discussed, he was at 33.5. He didn't clear that. I'm like, all right, just enough of the running quarterback props. I am going to be laying off them to the very best of my ability, because everything else I pretty much had a good run at last week and was certainly on the good side of the ledger. But man, those QB rushing overs and unders, I have had a heck of a time the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, those rushing props certainly have been hair pulling, to say the least. I know Brad personally, I took one of his bets over the weekend in the NFL. Even my Saturday rolled into Sunday when Caleb Williams took a knee. We lost his rushing prop over. So I'm like, any type of way that we could lose, it can happen right now. But obviously, betting should be fun, and we're going to continue to make it fun here, win or lose. So Eric won last week. He had the best record on this show. But before we talk about the number one ranked game to talk about, I think there's a lot of value on the board still for teams to make the college football playoff, guys. 7 teams I actually circled in particular. If any of these catch your eye, please tell me if you think they're worth a bet now, because I know Brad will back Alabama. There's Miami out there at minus 150, Tennessee at plus 100, Missouri, Utah, LSU, all between plus 150 to plus 250. And you still have teams like Kansas State on the outside looking in. Or do you guys like USC, the Oklahomas, or Texas State at plus 800?
I'll start with that. Missouri is an interesting one for me because I believe Missouri could be a 10-win team. And then when you have a 10-win Missouri team who's probably going to blow out most of their other opponents, it's going to be really hard to leave them out. I'm on Alabama. I've been on Alabama since the beginning of the season at close to even money there. Let's see what else. Tennessee. There's a lot of teams with favorable schedules. I think I named 2 SEC teams. Let me go outside of the SEC. I wouldn't bet LSU to make it. LSU haven't been good, as good on the offensive line as I thought they'd be. They also lose top running back there in Emory. Just a lot of questions. I don't know if Lacey's 100% either. I didn't even understand his injury. He was bleeding. I don't know. Just too many question marks from that team. So let's talk negative about the SEC for a little bit, so I'm just not on one side of the fence. But yeah, there's a ton of value because there's going to be so many good teams across the country that have really favorable schedules that just don't play each other. I saw some of the tiebreakers were kind of ridiculous.
I still think there's room on Ole Miss. I was on them before the season, and obviously it's been a nice start and an easy start, but they get Wake Forest this week, and we were lucky enough to get a 305.5 opening on Jackson Dart. It was a brief fleeting opening that I managed to get a piece of, and then Prize Picks dragged it right back down. So I've liked what I've seen from Ole Miss. Tennessee is another good, shot that wasn't one of the traditional powers that we saw up top in the early season. So those would be 2 that I like.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. SEC has like 3, 4, 5 teams that could make it. I mean, we know Georgia's going to be in there, but the rest of the teams are going to be fighting for those few spots. But I do like Missouri, as you guys mentioned. I think that they have a good path. Tennessee plays Alabama, Georgia, and Oklahoma this season, so their schedule's a little tougher. But a team like Boston College, gentlemen, could certainly put themselves on the board with a win against Missouri. They're still sitting between plus 600 and plus 800. When you look at their schedule, They have Louisville. That's the only ranked team left outside of Missouri. So with that Florida State win, they kind of put themselves in position. So that's a team worth watching, and that's a team that we're going to start talking about here because they are road dogs of 16.5 at those Missouri Tigers. Total sitting at 54. This game is Saturday at 12:45 p.m. Eastern. Weird kickoff. But as we mentioned last week, Boston College did very well, Eric. They upset Florida State, smacked Duquesne, but Missouri is 8-1 against the spread in their last 9 games dating back to last year. So what's the play here between these two?
Yeah, welcome Bill O'Brien, former Patriots OC, former Alabama OC Brad. And he is not subtle about what he wants to do, does it? 52 times he ran last game for 263 yards, 5.1 yards per carry against Florida State. They threw the ball just 20 times. They didn't even really want to. They just wanted to keep bludgeoning that pathetic Seminoles front, just completely overmatched. And they're real slow. I mean, they're 130th in terms of seconds per play, but ranked 4th in standard downs run rate. 81% of the time, they're running the ball on standard downs. I mean, that's what Boston College is going to do here. They're not, it doesn't get fancy. I mean, maybe a little bit of play action where they go and take a shot downfield to Lewis Bond, with Thomas Castellanos. But I mean, this is going to be, it's not going to be particularly, a lot of subterfuge. It's not going to be a lot of trickery. That's what Boston College does. On the other side with Missouri, keep in mind, they played 2 cupcakes, 89-0. They've destroyed those 2 teams. So despite that poor competition, they haven't hit big plays. 118th in ISO PPP, 120th in marginal explosiveness. So with Missouri, kind of, keeping it rather conservative, playing a slow pace that you think Boston College wants to employ, I kind of like the under here, where I think it was around 54, 55 or so. I think we get a slower pace.
Yeah, this is an interesting game from a betting perspective if you're looking at the side here, because you don't know exactly what to expect. Like Eric said, this Missouri defense was elite, but they didn't play anybody, right? And then we have Boston College, who were absolutely stifling on 3rd and 4th down defense against the Seminoles. I think they held the Seminoles to 3 and 14 on 3rd downs. Really slow pace game between these two. Bill O'Brien, the kind of coach who I think maximizes the potential out of his guys. And when he finds something that works, he just hangs his hat on it. So I think that this Boston College team, if they can just keep it close early, it stays close throughout the game. But I do think the 3rd and 4th down success is going to be different when you have, Brady Cook thrown into Burden, Weiss, Mookie, who are just a bunch of pass catchers who are really talented. I just couldn't go all the way. I think the spread's like 16 or 17. I couldn't do it. I would lean Boston College getting kind of blanketed here and annihilated. But listen, when you have a good ground game, good game plan, it keeps you in a lot of these 2 and 3 touchdown spread games. So I passed on it, but I don't even have a lean. I was like looking to find something so I can get my juices flowing early, but it was the ultimate pass.
Luther Burden touchdown, man. Don't overthink it, Brad. Come on. You want it. This guy's an animal. But I couldn't really pick the side of the spread either. Just moved out to 17 from 16.5. But I'm with Eric. I actually think the under would probably be the side of the angle I'd take in this game. I feel like in that 4th quarter, the game is really going to slow down. But these teams don't play each other very often. And this is probably the most hype Boston College has had in the past decade for football, and Missouri as well. So it's kind of a situation where I feel like these teams are building themselves up, and one of them could tear themselves down here pretty soon. And obviously, Boston College being the big dog looks likely. But talking about big dogs, let's talk about Georgia. They are 24.5-point favorites at Kentucky. Those Wildcats, total sitting at 45.5. It's a Saturday game at 7:30 Eastern. And Brad, we're going to start with you here because I know you are big on Georgia, but Kentucky is a team that scored 13 or fewer points in 6 of the last 7 meetings against Georgia. Does this Kentucky Wildcats offense have enough to score more than once against the Bulldogs?
Yeah, they might score 1 touchdown, but I don't think so. Brock Vandagriff, not a good quarterback there. 111th in offensive success rate through the air, which is absolutely hilarious. I went with Georgia first quarter -6.5. I also took Georgia first half -12.5 in this game. For me, this offense, we've seen it last year. top 5 in just about every great advanced analytic that you want to talk about for this Georgia team. Now they get ETN for a second game. Funny thing to pay attention to in this game is the usage for ETN. How much do they utilize him against a Georgia team who they should absolutely blow out with Alabama in 2 weeks ahead of the bye week? I thought his number was pretty interesting. I think you could get it around 80 now, 80.5. If you want to be daring, you think this is going to be a blowout, you bet his under, you think they keep him healthy. But yeah, I think Georgia handles business. Carson Beck was super efficient and accurate quarterback there. And then defensively, against this Kentucky offense, I think it's going to be one of the worst Kentucky offenses we've seen in quite some time. And I mean, this is a Kentucky team who had like 20 years of limited success. Against this Georgia team, I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of short fields for the Bulldogs, which makes me like both of those spreads even more. If you get short fields early, you get good field position. Georgia's going to convert on their opportunities. And I like having the bye week next week instead of having going straight to Alabama. So it's not going to be a look ahead spot to me.
Yeah, with Kentucky, I mean, you mentioned it, Brock Vandagriff. I've watched every one of his throws he's made so far, especially last week against South Carolina, where Dylan Stewart, the redshirt freshman defensive end, was just absolutely all over him. Vandagriff, very nervous outside of structure. He pretty much just had to take protected shots. Anytime there was any kind of a rush, he completely fell apart. Even when he wasn't, harassed, he was routinely missing throws. And when it seems like every time he'd feel just a hint of pressure, he's automatically rolling to his right. It's like there's no stepping up in the pocket, and feeling the outside, feeling that loop pressure and stepping up and delivering a throw. It's immediately bail from the entire pocket altogether. The game-ending pick six he threw, he was rolling left, finally, stopped and tried to throw all the way across the field. And just a linebacker was sitting there just waiting for it, sailed it right into his arms, pick six, game over against South Carolina. I mean, just as bad a quarterbacking performance as you're ever going to see. Keep in mind, last year, Georgia beat Kentucky 51-13. Carson Beck threw for 385 passing yards. They literally did anything they wanted to him. I don't see anything different. I see any reason to feel good about Kentucky, having watched what I saw out of Brock Vandagriff. I like the over for Carson Beck. He's only at 244.5. I mean, they're going to be able to dictate the tempo and the pace and pretty much do what they want. Yeah. With a game script where they should be comfortable. I mean, he threw for 385 last year. You think they don't want Carson Beck to get a little Heisman hype? You think they don't want to showcase him a bit? They do. And keep in mind, Nate Frazier, their sensational freshman running back, he got dinged up last game. Like, all right, how many? I hope you've got Cash Jones ready. Get the walk-ons ready if that's what's going to happen. They're not going to want to beat up the very few healthy running backs they still have left. So I think you'll see a nice, comfortable win out of Georgia. I like the Beck over. And God, if you want to, I'm not going to blame you for taking that under on 130.5. Brock Vandagriff passing. He threw for 100 last game. He was absolutely pitiful. They were afraid to even let him drop back. I mean, I get it. Even at 130, I can't even blame you. He was that bad.
No, that's a blown coverage type over if he hits that. I mean, yeah, I agree with you. Georgia should dictate almost everything in this game. Kentucky's offense the last few years have been the most reliant team probably in the country when it comes to explosive plays. And I think when you see a quarterback line with 130.5, you can't expect many explosive plays, if any, in this game. So, yeah, I'm with you guys. I like all 4 plays. Might have to do a little same game parlay with them, but we got Beck over 244.5, Vandagriff under 130.5, and then Brad likes Georgia's first quarter and first half of 6.5 and 12.5. I like that Bulldogs first quarter play a lot, Brad. But I know we're closing on Eric territory here when we're talking West Coast teams. It's Arizona and Kansas State. Number 20 versus number 14. Wildcat on Wildcat, baby. 7.5 is the spread in favor of Kansas State, the home team here, with a 59.5 total. It's a Friday night fight here. Eric, Arizona's won 6 straight as a ranked team. They have one of the most dangerous receivers in the country, McMillan, 304 yards and 10 receptions for 4 tutties in week 1. Which Wildcats team gets the win, and which props do you have your eye on?
Well, I always have my eye on all the props, of course. But with this Arizona team, what I'm curious about is how they handle the run game of Kansas State. Obviously, DJ Gittens Avery Johnson, we mentioned before, is a run-first quarterback who is forced to pass from time to time, not particularly well. In terms of their defense, Arizona, 112th in EPA per rush, 122nd in yards per carry before contact, averaging 3.2 yards per carry before they put a mitt on rushers. And against, again, this Kansas State team, they would rather beat you up. They would rather go the DJ Giddens route. I like a couple different plays because of what we kind of discussed with Arizona and where they are soft. I like and obviously where Kansas State is strong, which is along the line and running the ball. I like DJ Giddens over 2.5 receptions. He has gotten 6 and 5 targets each of the past 2 games. Previous year, offensive coordinator Colin Klein is out. He's now at Texas A&M, whole new philosophy, and it looks like, with 11 targets over the first 2 games, he is absolutely going to be worked into that philosophy. And gosh, 2.5 receptions, playing a competitive game against Arizona that they should, in theory, at least be giving up some points. I like the idea of over 2.5 receptions a lot. And if you want to go and take a look at a potential ladder just for kicks, DJ Giddens plus 340 to have 40+ receiving yards. Hey, if he's getting 6 targets, the chances of him breaking one is pretty good against an Arizona defense that, as you said, they have a really good cornerback one. Taco, he's one of the best in terms of the country. But other than that, I'm not too worried about that linebacker core that's kind of rebuilt. So I like that. And then Jace Brown, wide receiver, Kansas State, under 55.5. I think he's at 52.5 right now. I still like that. Keegan Johnson was out week 1. He comes back week 2, and Jace Brown was simply not the same factor in a game where I think it'll be a heavy run script. With him being up at 52.5 receiving yards, I have my questions. So those are my 2 plays for that game.
Brad, do you have anything that you want to target in this game? I know you don't like seeing 40+ receiving yards for running backs after what happened on Monday night.
No, I was in shock because I heard 40+ yards, and my plus 4,000 parlay died on the last leg with Breece Hall getting 39. I had him at 39.5. So little PTSD on my part. First and foremost, on this game, I do lean Arizona plus the 7.5 here. If we learned anything from this Kansas State team, they're going to struggle to get off the field with an effective quarterback. In that game against Tulane, converting 3rd and 4th downs late in the game, couldn't pull away. I think that's something that we're going to kind of expect here. I really was disappointed in the Kansas State secondary as well. They were not good in that game. I'm fading their secondary with Noah Fafita. I missed the number a little bit on his line, so I made a little parlay. I wanted to bet him at plus 250. It jumped out, but I made a parlay with Georgia money line and Noah Fafita 250+. Massive ADOT in the first game. Obviously, you mentioned McMillan going the 300+. I think McMillan will have his success in this game through the air running routes, and Fafita will be able to find him. I also think that this game will not be as slow as predicted, just because the explosive plays will be there, whether it be in the run game or through the air for each team, which gives me a little bit more comfort that it's not going to be a stalemate and teams are just totally pounding the rock and it's 14-17 at the end. So I took Fafita over 249 parlayed with Georgia money line.
I think he's going to be very active in that game. And I live bet Kansas State against Tulane plus 3.5, and they ended up coming back in the victory by 7. But Kansas State's defense,
I think their spread was 7.
Yeah, it was. So they pushed, but if you live bet at all in that game, you could have got Kansas State all the way up to plus 7.5 as an underdog. So they were getting worked in the first half, which is definitely concerning. Could be a little bit of a look ahead spot, but they cleaned up in the second half against Tulane. They outscored them 24-7. And Avery Johnson honestly looked pretty good outside the Kansas State defense too. Like I said, scoop and scoring. So this was a game that I really couldn't get behind either side. I leaned to Arizona here because Kansas State didn't look that great. But this might be a game where it's a solo game on Friday night. I think that both teams could absolutely light it up, quarterbacks offensively. So I would lean the over, but no play for me because my next bet and first bet of the week is Colorado at Colorado State. I will be in Denver this weekend, gentlemen. So nice. I'm trying to find a sports bar to watch this game and get rough and rowdy. I think it's going to be a great game. Colorado's a 7-point favorite. The spread was 7.5, so it's come down. Total's sitting at 58.5. And I'm going to run it back on Shedeur Sanders over 2.5 passing touchdowns, Brad. Last year was an absolute thriller between these two. It went to OT. Sanders threw a game-winning touchdown. He had 4 passing touchdowns on the game, 3 in the second half. And I think over 2.5 in this game for plus 116 odds, I think that's a good bet here. I mean, we're not going to continue hitting the harp that they can't run the ball. The offensive line stinks. We know this stuff already, right? But the statistics are there. When they're in close games, they're determined by single digits, so 9 or less points. He's thrown for at least 2 touchdowns in 8 of those 9 games the past 2 seasons. So 3+ and 5 out of 9. I like the plus money odds. I'll take that in my pocket, Brad. Who's he throwing a touchdown to?
He's thrown a touchdown to Mr. Travis Hunter. I bet this number around the minus 135 price. It's just he's going to be the main target in the red zone. What you've seen there. What's kind of funny here too is we talked about Dallin Hayden last week. He went over on his prop last week. Finished with 32 yards on 5 carries. Colorado has been very funny in these first 2 weeks. Week 1, they only allowed 1 or 2 sacks. Obviously, not playing against FBS team, but I was like, maybe this ragtag group of offensive line has put it together. And then they go against Nebraska. Man, I saw the videos of when Coach Prime and Colorado entered the stadium. Nebraska was lit, booed him every single time. And then I got word from someone at the game. Every time they showed Prime on the Jumbotron, the entire crowd booed. That was a statement game, a revenge game. And it showed that Colorado, as many talented weapons they have offensively, if you can't protect the quarterback or you can't get off the field, then you're going to lose the game and it's not going to be pretty. I really do expect a big bounce back from Colorado in this game. We saw that thriller last year, the overtime instant classic. I think we all laddered Shedeur Sanders passing yards in that game, and then he got it in overtime. I was asleep, to tell you the truth, because it was so late. But I do like Travis Hunter. I think we're going to see a lot of Travis Hunter touchdowns against secondaries or front sevens even that aren't going to get a ton of pressure on Shedeur Sanders. If he has time, Travis Hunter is going to be one of his targets.
Yeah, for this game, I just feel like with Colorado, all the things you mentioned are right on the money. But I'm looking at their defense here, and their pass defense, to be specific, they are dead last nationally in pass completion rate allowed. 77% of passes they're allowing to be completed. Thank you, Dion. Very generous of you to your opponents. I mean, you can go down the line. EPA per dropback, 120th. Yards per dropback, 123rd. I mean, the list, the names, goes on and on. Total QBR, 130th. Point is, they are a absolutely biblically bad pass defense, and they're playing Colorado State, which Jay Norvell, former head coach of Nevada, offensive coordinator is Matt Mumme, son of Hal Mumme, the intellectual sort of figurehead of the air raid offense, and that's what they do. They throw all the time, and against this Colorado defense, that what they do is they allow you to throw all the time. Colorado State's short, rhythmic, get the ball into the playmakers' hands and allow them, in space to create with yards after catch type style. I think it plays really well into this sort of a game script. I expect Colorado to be throwing, as we discussed. Nobody does it more. That's what they do, is they throw. They don't run the ball particularly well, as we know, even though Dallin Hayden cleared it. They're 133rd in yards per successful rush, 134th dead last in yards per rush. So they're not going to be doing much of that. What I like is, keep in mind, last year when these two teams played, right, Colorado and Colorado State, they do play every year, everyone. Don't worry. 43-35. Colorado beat Colorado State. Very competitive game in which Braden Fowler-Nicolosi, quarterback for Colorado State, unleashed 47 passes, completed 72%, which is on brand.
Yeah.
367 yards. Wow. His current over-under is set at 232.5. His ladder play over at DK, 300+ yards, is plus 360. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be absolutely nuking this Braden Fowler-Nicolosi line. This is a terrible defense. The script is all in our favor. Gear it up. That is one of my 2 best bets of
Heck
the week.
yeah.
I love that, teasing an early best bet on this show, but I can't find a reason to disagree with that.
Came to me,
No. I mean, he had 202 yards in the last game, 3 touchdown victories, so no need to go over that number here. But this is going to be a great game, competitive.
And
if you
Texas,
remember,
the first game, Texas smothered Michigan too. Like
yeah.
I'm not going to be going ding them. A Mountain West team for getting beat up on by Texas. Fine.
No, and just so that we are clear here before we go to our little promo and we get to our ladder plays and such, what is the ultimate number you would play this to? You'd expect them to have a huge game, but are you playing this at 255.5 example if it gets to that on Saturday?
I'm probably steaming it up to 249.5, and then, like I said, depending on where the ladders are, why not take a 3.5 to 1 shot at 300 yards? It happened last year. Stranger things have happened, especially against Colorado defense. So if this is the team's identity, which it is, that's what they want to do is throw the ball. Wheels up, give it to me.
Yeah, let's get both quarterbacks aired out through the air. Travis Hunter, strong start to the season, 110, 132 yards and 3 touchdowns in those 2 games. So. Yeah, he certainly could find his way in the end zone too. I like the plays and I like that game. So hopefully everyone enjoys that. Hopefully everyone dominates this NFL season with a Fantasy Life Plus subscription. You guys can get weekly rankings, start sit advice, DFS analysis, and betting tools. All you have to do is use promo code season20 for 20% off. Go to fantasylife.com/rotoworld to learn more. And as promised, the ladder plays are going to be juicy. Eric just gave you one. And I absolutely love it. Mine are not too sexy, but I'm going to kick things off here with Shedeur Sanders. 4+ passing touchdowns for him at plus 380, I think is something that we should probably get involved in. I already like the over 2.5, but it's something he did against Colorado State last year. And I was trying to find parlay odds, but they're not out there yet, gentlemen. 2 defenses that could score this weekend. Michigan's defense and Iowa's defense. I think there's potential for both of those. So I was going to try and parlay the both, but we didn't have odds on it yet. So I only got Michigan plus 280. They're taking on Arkansas State, who is going to try and throw the ball, which is exactly what the Michigan Wolverines want. So I like Shedeur. I like Michigan. That's nothing new dating back to last year. Brad, what do you like?
Listen, I want to piggyback off what you said. Defense there to score a touchdown. Alabama's Crimson Tide are going to score a touchdown on defense this week. Just going to go and put that one out there. You'll probably get a good price on that. We'll go deeper into that when we get to that. But let me talk about my ladder. And I'm going to do a 2-for-1 here because I don't think we're covering this game. I'm on Trey Harris first and foremost. Over 78.5 receiving yards against Wake Forest. That's Ole Miss wide receiver. First, let's just talk about sheer volume. 20 targets in 2 games, 17 catches, 170 yards in one, 139 in the other. It was funny. I was watching Ole Miss. I was on Trey Harris last week at 78.5 as well. And I was like, oh my God, they're just going to be running the ball down their throats. Ruthless. They're not just running the ball. They're throwing the rock. Doesn't matter what the score is. They're going to run their offense, which is absolutely something you want to see when you're taking a pass catcher over. So now you look at the matchup against Wake Forest. Wake Forest, my God, that secondary, bad. When they played against Virginia, not only did Candelara have over 350 passing yards, they allowed 5 plays of 20 yards or more through the air. Ranked 115th in defensive success rate to the pass. It's going to be really funny to see. The weather's really nice. It's actually, the weather's overcast with just a little chill in the air, which I kind of like for passing. It's not going to be too hot, and Trey Harris is going to get the ball. It's funny because, like, when you look at, like, Juice Wells, the other option for Ole Miss, his line set at like 45.5, 43.5. But you have Carson Beck, who's 3.6, you have Jackson Dart, who's 316 passing yards. That ball's going somewhere. So I laddered him as well. 120 receiving yards. Hit this in both games. Plus 265.
Juicy. I like that. Would you I'm kind of jealous right now because I thought Michigan's defense was going to be the favorite to score a touchdown this weekend. It's not. It's Alabama.
Wait,
Alabama's
really?
plus 265 on one book, plus 340 on the other. I got plus 280 on Michigan. So technically, Bama is the favorite defensive scorer. Are you willing to buy into that price, plus 280 or plus 340?
I mean, I think they're going to score, and without calling too much out, basically, Wisconsin are in a very bad script for their inadequacies. Where they are not efficient is where they're going to be prone to make mistakes, which is not good, but it helps if you want to bet a defensive touchdown.
I like it. Eric, what you got?
Yeah, Tyler Van Dyke is a wild man, as we all know.
Yeah.
I love him for it, but he's a wild man. Yeah, as far as the ladders go, I'm going to go over to Texas A&M in Florida. Florida defense, what they do not do particularly well is pass defense. And obviously they lost his first two games. They lost first game, switched over to DJ Lagway, and he threw for over 400 yards. And just Billy Napier let him loose. He has to win. We'll see what happens with Graham Mertz, still in concussion protocol. But, I mean, I could certainly see a scenario here where there is shootout potential. Florida has to throw the kitchen sink. Billy Napier is trying to save his job, but he has a pathetic pass defense. 119th in completion rate, 122nd in completions of 20-plus yards, and 107th in passing success rate. With Connor Wegman, former five-star quarterback, was hurt last year, but was really good when he had the opportunity to, throw a little bit. Played Notre Dame week one that has one of the best pass defenses in the country, even if they couldn't stop NIU on the ground last week and allowed 190 rushing yards. But when it comes to Connor Wegman, look at his ladder. 250 yards is a plus 350 against this Florida pass defense. 275 yards is plus 750. Okay, that's a gigantic 7.5 to 1 spread for just 275 yards, which, should it be lined at 250 as his line? Probably not, but it's not that far out of the realm of possibility against this Florida defense. And then what we saw Florida do last week, if they're scoring, that they're going to have to keep pace. That's very much in play. I love that ladder for Connor Wegman.
Yeah, I absolutely love that one too. And I know you were as adamant before the show about this play. I've got to say, you lived with the hype breaking it down, Eric. Love that. Get in our pockets there. A couple other plays that we're going to talk about and some games we're going to talk about is Oregon State next. We have the Alabama game. You mentioned Notre Dame, Eric, which kind of, irritated Brad and myself, but we'll have to talk about it today. But let's start with the Ducks and the Beavers. This is a game that has another big spread, 16.5 in favor of Oregon. Total sitting at 50.5. Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern game, so a little earlier. Usually it's not a night kickoff here between the two, but we do know, Brad, that the home team has gone 4-0 in the last 4 meetings. So can the Beavers not only cover the 14, but can they win this game outright, or is this the time that the Oregon Ducks finally click?
There's a lot of question marks about Oregon.
Yeah.
Right? They had Dylan Gabriel, the Heisman favorite preseason. Oregon was like second favorite to win the Big Ten. Now people are wondering if Oregon will even make the playoffs. And I do think it's a bit of an overreaction. Yeah, stumbled against Idaho, but that's just a whatever game. And then they played against Boise State. I thought in the second half they started to clean up. There were some turnover differences. They had to stop Alshon Jeanty, which Alshon Jeanty is a freaking man, dude. And I was like wondering if he would hit his number. They set his over number so high in that game. I knew he was just going to obliterate it. Great game for him. Oregon State started the season okay, right? They bring in Giovanni McCoy from, I'm drawing a blank on where he's from. They bring in Giovanni McCoy, who is a run-first quarterback, right? He's not a guy who's going to be chucking the ball down the field. They lose a ton on the offensive line. They lose literally 3 coaches like the blink of an eye, even their offensive line coach, offensive coordinator, head coach. I was worried about this number, right? But I thought I would probably have it closer to 14 if I wanted to take Oregon here, just because Oregon, they haven't had the success, right? If you're betting on Oregon, you're betting on Oregon to be successful at some point, right? It's not what you've seen, but what is going to happen. And I just don't know if this is the game where it's going to happen. And I don't want to test it out, right? What Oregon State's going to do, and I don't think they're going to be bashful about it, is they're going to run the ball. 108th in run rate, over expected. Dealing with a little bit cold, so these long sessions of talking are getting to me, but I'm going to get it out because I'm really excited about this play. I wrote this game up for NBC Sports as well on the website. Make sure you check it out. But they're going to run the ball. McCoy's number is 170 passing yards, and I think he goes under that. They're going to want to keep attacking this front seven of Oregon and see if they can have similar success as Boise State. I went with Jam Griffin over 47.5 rushing yards. When I was writing this up, I had his total at 60.5 as the open, and it opened 10 points lower. Instantly went to go bet 70.5 rushing yards at plus 400, and it got sliced to plus 320. Then it got sliced to plus 190. Never even got the bet in. I think he explodes. He's had 250 yards on something like 38 carries. This is obviously going to be a much more talented defense, but they've been getting kind of pushed around. And we'll see, like even Idaho had a little bit of limited success running the ball. So I like this number. He's going to be the bell cow back. He does split a little bit, but he will get the bulk of the carries.
Yeah, I actually like that play, and it kind of plays into what Oregon is doing, what they're not doing well. As mentioned, they played Idaho and they played Boise State. Zero Power 4 teams. Rank 120th in yards per rush allowed. Rank 109th in opportunity rate, 102nd in stuff rate. They are just simply, their offensive line is not doing what they need to. And that has trickled down, frankly, into their pass protection. 115th with a 9.1% sacks per drop back rate. Keep in mind, last year, Bo Nix barely got touched back there. Only had 5 sacks allowed all year, Oregon. So they're not getting it done on the line when it comes to what they're trying to do. Passing, they've been fine. Dylan Gabriel's actually been really good. It's just they need to get more push up front, and they need to protect better. It's just that simple, because they're not hitting big plays. And you can't hit big plays if you don't have time. So I really like the Jam Griffin play, 47 yards, splitting time with Hankerson. But, there's nothing wrong with that, given what we saw from Genty. We saw holes, too. It wasn't like he was creating it all himself. Like, they were able to get push. I'm concerned about what we're seeing from this defensive front and offensive front out there. Like I was saying, both sides of the ball, running and run defense. I like that play by Jam Griffin. I like it a lot. I don't have one for myself at the moment, but I support Brad's.
Yeah, I support as well. And that spread I'll mention too has grown out in favor from Oregon minus 14 to 16.5. So this number gets to 17.5. We could see some Oregon State supporters start betting it down. It could be pros versus Joes there. But let's talk about Alabama. This is Brad's wheelhouse. Number 4, Alabama taking on Wisconsin. That spread 16.5 as well for the road favorite. Total sitting at 51.5. Brad, what do you like in this game outside of Jam Miller?
Yeah, I have a bunch of plays.
Wait, there's 2 Jams?
Yeah, there's Jam Griffin and Jam Miller.
What?
Totally different teams. Yeah. I think I'm also betting on 2 different Hayneses in this show as well. So just to confuse everybody even more. This game has sent me for a whirlwind. Initially, I wanted to be with Wisconsin plus the 16.5. Camp Randall's a tough place to play, right? Really great at covering his double-digit dogs. I think they haven't lost against the spread as a double-digit dog, since like the 70s, maybe, right? And then I was like thinking about what Alabama wants to do in this game. They're going to run the ball, right? Alabama 85th in rush rate over expected. Basically, what that means is they run the ball a crap ton. And why not, right? And then I was also ready to be excited about Wisconsin if Pritchard doesn't play, if Caden Proctor doesn't play. Those are 2 offensive linemen that are absolutely necessary for the success of this Alabama team. Word came in that Pritchard's probably going to play, probably going to start, probably going to have a full workload. When he played last week, it was night and day. Everyone who was hanging on an Alabama cover or an Alabama second half cover, the dude played 5 plays. They outscored South Florida 28-3 in those 5 plays that he was on offense. And you could see it. And it's kind of piggybacks into my first play. What happened? They were getting great protection on the right-hand side, running the ball great. For a lot of people who don't know what happened inside that game, they put in Formby, and Formby was getting tossed around. A lot of blown assignments, a lot of holds, and then they couldn't run the ball. Averaging less than like 2.1 yards per carry. And then they start getting some explosive plays running behind Pritchett. Well, I took this on underdog. I took Jam Miller over 18.5 as his longest rush. Has hit this in both games and actually hit this in 2 of his last 3 games to end the season last year. He's just an explosive running back. It's funny, running back by committee for Alabama. And at the beginning of the year, Jam Miller, I think I even came on here and said I want to bet Jam Miller Heisman. They don't have his odds. He's just explosive. And when they talk to running backs coach Gillespie, they say we're going to be an even backfield until someone gets the hot hand. And I think that's going to be Jam Miller. I also took another play, and I'll be brief with these last two plays so we're not just here all day, but I took the other running back over rushing yards. The number was just way too low for me. Alabama's going to run the ball the bulk of the time here, going to be good behind a good offensive line. And much like Jam Miller, he has that breakaway power and speed. He was averaging 2.4 yards per carry with he had a couple bigger runs, but he just wasn't getting it done. But this is just another situation where I think Alabama are going to feed their guys. And then the last play, Kobe Prentice over 28.5 receiving yards. Kobe Prentice last week was 68.5. We bet his under. But what happened in that game? Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, right? Kendrick Law plays the entire game. My whole thought process behind Kobe Prentice was he's out of the rotation. Senior wide receiver out of the rotation, not getting as many snaps. Kendrick Law makes a mistake. And then Adams gets hurt. And guess who's playing a ton? Kobe Prentice on the field all of the time. Had 2 catches for about 48 yards in that game. A few more targets. Average yards per target was about 15. So now the number's just too low. The books corrected based on the information they had, but K-Law is going to be lowered down. Hale's not even close to returning. And his yard per target is also just too high not to take. 28.5 over. I took it. And I think Alabama cover the spread. If you look around, you can find 14.5 is still out there.
Yeah, I mean, you make good points about the rushing attack. I have some concerns about Alabama. 76 in rushing success rate, 100th in yards per carry after contact. What's going on, Jam Miller and Justice Haynes? What's the deal with that? 87th in power success rate, right? So they've been a lot more effective when they've chosen to throw the ball. They haven't done it as much, obviously, because they've been able to, they're Alabama and they played 2 lesser opponents they can kind of lean on. But when they threw the ball, Miller was extremely effective. He hasn't thrown an interception yet, but, 7th in EPA per dropback, 18th in yards per dropback. Pretty darn good. It all is in terms of the, 20-plus yard completions. Everything is in line. What I'm concerned about is the offensive line. Look. Hasn't been good clearing the way. Hasn't been good in power situations. 7.5% sack rate per dropback. That's 102nd. Sacks per pressure. Okay, Jalen Milroe, 57% of the time he's pressured, he's sacked. That's 126th in the country. So there's work to be done here for Alabama. They haven't played particularly well against Western Kentucky and especially USF. I know you watched the game. USF was in the backfield all game long. I'm sorry. They were not able to protect Milroe, and they were running the ball most of the time. That's a concern for me against Wisconsin. I think 16.5 is too much. I think Wisconsin can keep it close. And I do think that because of that, you'll probably see Milroe throw a little more than he's had to the first 2 games. They've definitely been heavy on the run script, but I can't help but kind of like the over 211.5 of Jalen Milroe. I think you see a little more out of him, having to throw a little bit more this week. And I like the Prentice 28.5 as a result. Yep. When they hit big plays. So that's a good recipe.
Yeah, I was going to say Alabama looked very explosive in that fourth quarter against USF, outscoring them, 28-3. But Brad, I wanted to ask you, because did Alabama's fourth quarter make you more confident moving forward with Alabama in the futures market?
No. And it was not just the fourth quarter. It's because, so Eric talked about the bad offensive line play. Many people, I don't think, realize Alabama remade their entire offensive line just for that game. That it's not an excuse of them being good or bad. It's scary. If you have that little depth where you're moving 3 offensive linemen to different parts on the line, that's not good for longevity because people are going to get hurt. And if that's what you have to do and you have that little bit of success, I've been telling Alabama fans, I didn't feel like Alabama was a number 4 team in the country. It's just because you're going to have the depth later in the season.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Any lasting points on the game before we move on to my favorite game of the week?
Yeah, before I sounded crazy, I was just talking about Alabama touchdown. I think defensive touchdown. I think there's 2 things that I want to touch on. We don't talk about the Swarm D enough. if this becomes a negative game script for Tyler Van Dyke's just going to chuck it out there. Swarm D is pretty good to kind of create turnovers, number one, because of the defensive line. You literally can move your defensive line all over the place. At some points, you have your DN lining up in the inside to get more pace. And if you run any stunts from that position, now you have a guy stunting from the inside to the outside, which causes confusion for the offensive line, which makes it easier for the secondary because the quarterback is out of rhythm. And I think this is a good situation with a good script. If Sapp gets his third defensive touchdown of the season, man, I'll probably be smiling.
Yeah, I was going to say too, I find myself trying to look for quarterbacks to live bet the over passing yards when they're in negative game scripts, but can't be so quick to the window because a guy like Shitter Sanders may not even finish close to his like he did against Nebraska last week. So it's just definitely something I'm trying to catch myself live betting as well. But I like that quarterback look. Let's talk about, like I said, my favorite game of the week. It's Wazoo at Washington. I told you guys I'm on the Huskies win total under this year, but Washington is a 4.5 point favorite here. This is a neutral field game. So this is in Seattle at Lumen Field where the Seahawks play. Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, total at 56.5. I think the dog is live here. I think Washington State can get the win outright. So I played them at +5. It's down to 4.5. It's actually my people's parlay pick too this week. So sorry for anyone that's betting the Huskies and wants to ride with us. But Washington's won 9 of the last 10. So they have owned Wazoo. But I don't think this is the same Huskies team from the past, gentlemen. They have lost so much production, new coaching staff, new quarterback. Watching that first half against Eastern Michigan, I was so ready to back EMU plus the 25.5 before Washington scored 2 touchdowns in the final 3 minutes at half. But I really think the Huskies are not as good as advertised. So any strong opinions in this game? Eric, I'll start with you.
Yeah, with the Huskies, what are they not doing particularly well against a pretty soft schedule? You got Eastern Michigan and Weber State. They're not stopping the run. 111th in stuff rate, 99th with a 45% success rate allowed. They're not giving up much in the air, though. And frankly, while we thought this was the Washington State team that is the air raid, disciples that we're used to of the Mike Leach era, guess what they did last week? Oh, John Mateer went and ran the ball all day long. I mean, I can see that coming, but here we are, and damn, it worked pretty effectively. Good for them. They were able to really give Texas Tech a pretty damn good go, and that's the point. I mean, gosh, yards per successful rush, 5th. EPA per rush, 22nd. I can't believe we're talking about Washington State here, but yards per carry after contact, 1st in the country. I am absolutely baffled by what we're seeing, but look, let's take it for what it is. They haven't been as successful passing the ball, Washington State, 68th in success rate. They managed to hit big plays when they have been successful, but I think if you look at these two teams, Washington would like to protect that kind of soft, remade defensive line. Everybody's gone, essentially, from that team. And they've got Jonah Coleman, who's a real hammer there in the backfield. I think we see more of this running script. That's what both these defenses where they're most vulnerable. And with running games, with running scripts, and potentially rain, we're up there in the Pacific Northwest. I like the under 56.5 points.
Yeah. I haven't been giving out too many spreads. I think it's a little too early for me to be really confident here. Washington State, I want to be on John Maitrey rushing yards so much. What's really phenomenal about his rushing yards, 9 of them, I think he ran the ball 15 times. 9 of the 15 were gap runs, where they literally just said, we're going to run up the gap, design QB run. I was not expecting that. I actually go against the data and I'll say 8 because one of his runs should have been a scramble, even though he ran it up the gut. I don't think it was a QB draw, but then 6 of them scrambles. The dude was absolutely rushing, running. Don't have much to say, but if you can find his rushing over, I would bet it.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a good look too. A lot of what Eric just said too backs your play. So the under 56.5 is the play for Eric there, which I actually adore as well. I think this could be a low scoring game. Rivalry games are usually going to be low scoring games unless you're playing in the Big 12. But I like Wazoo in this one. I think they can win outright. So I played the +5 in the money line at +165. That game's on NBC and Peacock at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. And then after that one, we get another Peacock game, Indiana at UCLA. That one's 7:30 p.m. Eastern. UCLA is a 3-point favorite. Total sitting at 46.5. And guys, I mean, we talked about it last year. We haven't talked about it much this week, but you will not find a bigger supporter probably in this market than Curt Cignetti than myself. Him being a IUP head coach, that's where I went to school. I got to cover him in college, and he has totally exploded in his first 2 games as a Hoosiers coach. 108-10. He outscored his opponents, but Brad, I mean, beating FIU and Western Illinois, the Leathernecks, isn't ultimately too impressive, right? So now they are favorites traveling across the country in their first Big Ten game with this coach in a road game against a new first-year head coach as well, who's had a week off to prepare for this one. Man, give me UCLA plus a 3 in the money line. I'm not even overthinking, man.
Yeah, I side with UCLA here, not locking it in, but I think UCLA win this one as an underdog. It's putting my faith in Ethan Garber's #1, which is kind of scary why I didn't lock it in all the way. But UCLA, they opened up like a 9 or 7-point favorite against Hawaii. We're just in a tough spot to cover, right? New coaching staff, new system, traveling to Hawaii, didn't cover, but they won the game. Strangely, didn't give the ball to TJ Harden a ton, which I was kind of confused to see. But I do think this team, they get back to what they do best, and that's just putting their foot in the ground and going forward. One cut runs. I think they beat this Indiana team, excuse me. Statistically, though, with UCLA only playing 1 game against Hawaii, where Garbers threw 2 interceptions, Hawaii threw 2 interceptions as well. It's hard to put much stock into it. But I just think that cross country road trip, first one. This is the first one of the season, right? That's might weigh heavily on them. So I give them a little bit of advantage to UCLA.
UCLA's offense is pathetic. They stink.
Really?
I've had enough. 130th in success rate. They were absolutely worthless against Hawaii. I can't believe we're sitting here talking about this. Yeah. Deion Tomlin, gone. Chip Kelly, gone. All right. 132 success rate. We discussed. We got Ethan Garbers, who accounted for 320 of the team's 343 yards. Why I didn't run the ball? Because they couldn't run the ball. 9 carries for 9 yards out of Tamarian Harden. 71 rushing yards on 20 carries against a Hawaii front that allowed 172 yards a game last year. No. This UCLA team stinks, and it's going to continue to stink. And they're playing an Indiana team with, as you mentioned, Curt Cignetti, brings over a whole lot of experience, really hit that transfer portal hard. UCLA didn't. Indiana did. And with a better coaching staff, we saw Deshaun Foster's, if you haven't, go take a look at Deshaun Foster's Pac-12 interview. He's not ready for prime time. We'll just put it that way. I think Indiana blows the doors off of UCLA, and I can't wait to see the props come out for this game because I'm going to be all over whatever I can for the Indiana game. Give it to me. Easy call, Indiana. Whoops, UCLA. I don't care how far they have to go. That's a bad team.
Yeah, that was certainly the most awkward press introduction probably ever for his Pac-12 to the Big Ten media.
Not probably.
But I did not know UCLA played in Los Angeles till he told me, though. So thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Just kidding. I did know that. Everyone did. But
that's fair.
But yeah. So roast beef bet, Eric. You got Indiana. I got UCLA.
First roast beef bet of the season, is it?
Yeah, we're beefing. Oh yeah.
Yeah. You. It's crazy because you did tease me last week trying to get me to do Iowa State, and I didn't fully go into it. And then Iowa State kicked the game-winning field goal.
Of course, I knew that was coming. Don't worry, Thor messed that up too. I'll tease him.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. We all like the Hawkeyes there, but we'll get our money back. We'll just tease that to later in the show. But all right, gentlemen, we got 2 more Big Ten games to talk about, and then we're gonna roll into our best bets and our people's parlay. So let's get right to business. Notre Dame at Purdue. The Fighting Irish, Brad. I mean, I don't have a cap in this game. I'm done with this team. They are 10-point favorites now. Total, it was 12.5. It's come down. Totals at 45.5. Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Quick thoughts on this game after Northern Illinois stole our coin last week.
What defensive line? Man, I thought that we were just going to have this Notre Dame defensive line just come in, wreak havoc. If I remember certainly correctly, 0 sacks in that game.
Wow.
0 sacks by the Fighting Irish against Northern Illinois. I'm off this game. I was, and the reason I know that is because I was going to bet Hudson Card rushing under, thinking they'd get the Card a couple times, and the line set at 18.5, but just can't do it. I have no angle because I have no idea what Notre Dame team shows up, right? And this is a pivotal game because Notre Dame needs to get back to having success. Riley Leonard needs to find a solution in the passing game. And, there's some questions of who's going to catch the balls there, right? Like when Greathouse, one of your wide receivers, line set at 28.5 because there's no idea who you're going to feed the ball to. How are you going to be successful offensively? They're just going to stack the box against you and make life easy. Pass for me. Pass.
Yeah, with Notre Dame, I mean, quarterback Riley Leonard, it's been a very bumpy ride. 55.2 PFF passing grade. That is dead last amongst all Power 4 signal callers this season. That is absolutely terrible. I don't need to tell you about that. 6.8 ADOT, 10th lowest among FBS quarterbacks. 0-2 touchdown interception ratio. And he's coming off 2023. Where he completed 57% of his passes with a 3-3 touchdown interception ratio and 201 dropbacks. Okay. So we haven't seen the good Riley Leonard in a very, very long time. And that's bad news, obviously, as we saw from Notre Dame, because while they're playing Purdue, who was 4-8 last season, that was year one of Ryan Walters, former defensive coordinator for Illinois, who now is in year two of his scheme. And look, now they're not going to be nearly as bad and as porous as they were last year, give up 30 points a game. But with Notre Dame fielding one of the top secondaries in the country, right? 58th in defensive passing success rate, 55th in EPA per dropback. They allowed 9.9 yards per pass to Northern Illinois. Okay. We've seen a little bit of weakness. Now, what I think we see out of Hudson Card today is he was victimized by a 10% drop rate last year. It was one of the highest in the Power 4. But they do have one guy that he trusts implicitly, and that's Max Clare, tight end. Got 5 of 5 passes in week 1 for 71 yards. If you go back to last season, if you look over the second half, he was increasingly used more and more and more. Hudson Card really has a relationship with this guy that he trusts him, and they call a lot of plays with those Y options for Clare. I feel like he's kind of, as a safety blanket, he's not affected as much by Notre Dame's stout defensive secondary. And he gets game plan plays where they need 7-8 yards. He gets a lot of those looks. I think he sees at least 6 targets today, in this game. And if he does, 24.5 receiving yards is extremely reasonable. I think that's a great look as the over.
Yeah, certainly going to be a tough matchup for him against that secondary. So going with his safety blanket and the tight end, I think, is a good play there. And it's probably the safest play you could probably make in that game because, as Brad and I said, I mean, really want no parts of it as of right now. But the Hudson Card looks, I like that a lot. Last Big Ten game, Peacock game. It's a noon kickoff Eastern time. Central Michigan at Illinois. Illinois is 18.5-point favorites, total at 49.5. Obviously, we all kind of talked about that's a fishy line last week for Kansas favored against Illinois, but Illini got the home upset win. Now they got a look-ahead spot where they go on the road Friday to start Big Ten play at Nebraska and then to Penn State the following Saturday. So, Eric, you have in the rundown, you like Illinois minus the points. Why?
Yeah, I really was concerned what I saw with Central Michigan this past week against Florida International. I mean, they got boat raced 52-16 against FIU. Like, all right, I like Keon Junkins as much as the next guy. Give me a break, okay? That's a problem. Obviously, they had Bert Emanuel last year with the more dual threat quarterback. Joey Labas is now the QB transfer from Iowa. Did not look particularly good. Got to watch the game and all of his throws last week. I'm concerned. And when they're playing against an Illinois team with Brett Bielema, we know that they will go and they will absolutely maul a team if you give them the opportunity to do so. They will lean on you with that big, mean, physical offensive line, and they will put it on you. And they have a better QB in Luke Altmaier, who has grown a little bit and when he's healthy, has been effective. So I think that they can pass when they want to. I think they're going to be able to run when they want to. And that's bad news for a Central Michigan team that just got beat 52-16. 18.5 points. All right, I'll take Illinois given the 18.5 points after what I just saw from Central Michigan.
Well, good luck to you, kind sir, because that's a boat you're on by yourself.
I'm paddling, boys. Whatever it takes.
Stay afloat, my friend. Wear your life jacket. I need one too. But yeah, it's going to be a good slate of Big Ten games. That is the one that I'm going to stay away from because I have no idea. The MAC looked like the SEC to me during week 2. These guys were scoring left and right, so I want no part of the MAC this weekend. But in the NFL, it's going to be a great one on Sunday night. It's a matchup between 2 of the brightest young quarterbacks in week 2 on Sunday night. You can watch Caleb Williams and the Bears face off with CJ Stroud and the Texans in Houston. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
And we are back and standing on business here, Brad, because I love our people's parlay picks on BetMGM. $10 is paying out 72.77, but I'm going to be honest, Eric's pick, once again, scares the crap out of me. Why are you taking -2.5? We can take the money line, Eric. Tell me.
Last week, I win if you take the money line. Call it the money line. Take the money line. Fine. If that's the way you want to go, that's fine with it, especially since it's a parlay. I put in the 2.5 because it's like, I don't want to, if it's a standalone, that's one thing. But you're right. In a parlay, well, who cares, right? It doesn't matter. We're going to get good odds anyway. So, yeah, feel free to throw out the money line if you want to go with the Vaughn front, and I understand it when it comes to Cincinnati. Keep in mind, Miami last week played Northwestern, and Northwestern's offense is just terrible, and it's been pretty much proven to be such for the past couple of years. They scored less than 20 points a game last year. It was bad. So they played against Northwestern last week, and they couldn't do anything against Northwestern's defense. I mean anything. And this is a team that doesn't want to throw particularly often. 133rd in standard down run rate, 132nd in passing down run rate. They had to throw the ball all the time because rushing, they did nothing. 129th in stuff rate, 123rd yards per carry before contact, 123rd rushing success rate. Just literally could do nothing against Northwestern's defense the entire game. Scored 6 points. It was a 13-6 game. That's not what you're going to get out of Cincinnati. They're not going to have the same problems offensively that a completely restructured Northwestern is going to have. You got Brandon Sorsby, who was the quarterback for Indiana last year, looked awesome against Pitt, against a good, solid Pitt offense. They were outdueled last game, lost by 3, but they had no problem moving the ball, and that was an exciting Cincinnati versus Pitt game. I think with Miami, they're not going to be able to move the ball against Dante Coleone, the Godfather and company, for that Cincinnati front seven either. And with Cincinnati, I'm not worried about them moving the ball. No offense to Chuck Martin, but this is a team that can shoot. I am in for Cincinnati. I think they just handle Miami easily. This is a low line.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and go straight to mine because I'm keeping it simple. Keep it simple, stupid. I'm going with Texas minus 35 against UTSA. Sure, you can say, "Oh my God, they have a letdown spot after destroying Michigan," but I don't think so. I think they knew exactly what they were doing. They know exactly who they are. Man, remade defensive line looks really good. They were good on the back end. They were getting more push than I thought against that Michigan team, and Quinn Ewers looked phenomenal. UTSA stinks. They stink. Texas is going to cover the minus 35.5 or minus 35, excuse me.
Yeah, I like that number a lot there. I think Texas rolls once again. I like Washington State plus the 5 for the last leg of our parlay. I think they could win that game outright. The spread, in my opinion, should be more like 2.5 or 3 there. But the rivalry game is always going to be low scoring and close competitive games. So we like Cincinnati minus the 2.5, Texas minus the 35, and Washington State plus the 5 for our people's parlay on BetMGM. $10 pays 72.77. Odds are plus 623 there. All right, let's run through our favorite bets of the week before we get to our best bet quickly. I'm going to kick us off here and do the Troy Trojans team total under 7.5 at Iowa. Iowa obviously lost us some money last week, but this is a spot where I think they could absolutely trash Troy. They lost their quarterback. He's banged up and probable, but they did nothing until the fourth quarter of their last game. They lost 38-10, so a meaningless touchdown. They have no ground game. So give me the team total under 7.5 for Troy. Eric, what's one of your favorite bets?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Raheem Sanders for South Carolina. If you look the way that they have been running their offense, Lenore Sellers, the second-year quarterback, has proven himself to be, let's just say, an inaccurate passer, but a pretty impressive physical specimen when it comes to pulling the ball down and doing the RPOs. I mean, he's listed at 6'3", 240. He has those AR proportions. It's just he's clearly not ready to read a defense, and he has a long way to go in that front. With Raheem Sanders, again, another 240-pounder, you saw how they were able to control the line of scrimmage against Kentucky last game, and just through their defense, which ranks first in pressure rate, defensively, they are going to want to salt this game away and beat the other team up, LSU, who we saw how soft they are up front. They're going to want to control the game up front and really bludgeon them. I took Sanders at 53.5 when it opened. I still think it's a good deal at 64.5. Give me the over.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm rolling with another underdog, Pitt plus the 3 and the money line versus West Virginia. Backyard brawl, one of the best rivalries in college football. Should be a memorable game for the third year of this matchup being renewed, but both teams at home have won and gone 2-0 against the spread and on the money line. Neither team will look the same offensively as they did last year. Totally new quarterbacks. And totally new defenses as well. So this isn't quite the 2000s matchup between Pitt and West Virginia. So I like the Panthers plus the 3 and the money line. H2P held a Pitt. And I also played an under, which we haven't played too many game unders, only team totals on myself, but I'm towing under an Air Force and Baylor, Eric. That Air Force offense has been on the struggle bus. 21 versus Merrimack, 17 against San Jose State. Both of those were home games. Now they go to face Baylor before having a bye week. So absolutely hate both offenses in this game, to be honest. Give me the under 41.5 in Air Force and Baylor.
Yeah, like in terms of my other play, Jaheim White, running back, West Virginia. So it's been 62.5 rushing yards. That West Virginia offensive line is so good. Experienced 5 starters back, over 100 in line starts. They have just been mauling. And with Jaheim White healthy, explosive, he had taken over that backfield over the course of the second half of last season after C.J. Donaldson went down. Even though you're going to see both of them, I think they come after Pitt and try to impose their will upon them. They don't want to get into a shootout with their offensive coordinator, Cade Bell from Pittsburgh. They've shown that they can put the ball into the end zone. I like Jaheim White's over 62.5 rushing yards. I think he hits a big one.
I like that. Yeah. Let me go straight into the best bet. It's Mr. Jam Miller, longest rush over 18.5. Wisconsin just allows too many long runs on top of everything that I said earlier.
Yeah, love that one. I'm going Arkansas State team total under 12.5 at Michigan. Go Big Blue. We're bringing them back, boys. I think this is just a spot where the Wolverines honestly look phenomenal like they did in week 1 against Fresno State defensively. This Red Wolves offense for Arkansas State. 2 wins combined by 7 points against Central Arkansas and Tulsa. Michigan ain't that. A lot of 3-and-outs go under Arkansas State team total.
Yeah, and I like a sort of derivative play here. We're going to have a little fun. Jordan McLeod, QB, Texas State, over 0.5 interceptions. Keep in mind,
Ooh.
yeah, I know, a little spicy here, a little fun.
Yeah.
Interceptions, ooh, outside the box. Yeah, well, keep in mind, dating back to his time at JMU, Jordan McLeod has thrown an interception in 10 of his last 12 games, including both games this season. I just think going up against a Power 4 defense, it's looked pretty darn good in their first 2 games in Arizona State. You know, this Kenny Dillingham team, year 2, is now gotten out of the shadow of Antonio Pierce and Herm Edwards, and they're, you know, certainly succeeding at this point. I just think 10 out of 12 against Arizona State's defense, possibly being in a chase position, being in a, you know, having to put it up. 0.5 interceptions.
I love that. That's getting a little different. We haven't had an interception prop all season yet. So cheers to the first one. Let's be profitable here. So great show overall, guys. Jordan McLeod over 0.5 interceptions. Eric's best bet. Brad likes Jam Miller over 18.5 longest rush. And I like Arkansas State's team total under 12.5 at Michigan. Appreciate everyone that listened and watched us on the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe and like. If you guys don't know, now you know now. If his name is Jam, Brad will be taking him. If his last name is Haynes, Brad will be taking him, and they will be cashing for us. So best of luck with your bets. We'll see you for week 4.